Welcome. We are going to be talking about timeline shifting, what it means, how to harness this ability, because I actually believe that we timeline shift all the time. And I'm not the only one who believes this. There are other people out there like Bashar who says that we can shift on the order of seconds. And as somebody who has been trained formally as a neuroscientist, I find all of this very intriguing. Hi, Christopher. Hi, Mr. Butternut. I find this incredibly intriguing. How does it work if it's real? That's the big question. If it's real, how does it work? And what I can tell you from my training, which did not include quantum shifting, I hope one day I see a world where neuroscientists are studying this. But when I got my doctorate, my PhD in neuroscience, this was not part of our curriculum. Unfortunately, I believe that the way that the brain is wired to construct the perception and the simulation of reality, because what we know is that your perceiving reality is dictated by the inputs of your sensory system. Your sensory system, as defined by traditional materialist reductionists, neuroscientists like myself back in the day, your sensory system is derived from your five senses. Okay, what you can see, hear, taste, touch, etc. That is then relayed into your brain, which has a sophisticated processing unit, actually a series of them. It's not just one, but it goes through these pathways. And this is computed into your experience of reality. And there's something about the visual system that I find to be very interesting. If you don't know about this, this is, I think, one of the key elements to understanding quantum shifting and why our brains are wired to perceive only one reality structure. There's something about our visual system that you can look at the studies yourself. Your idea of reality, and this is Dr. Anil Seth, he teaches about this eloquently, by the way. I love his presentation about this, about the nature of reality and whether or not it's actually real. It turns out it's not. It's a manufactured image through our visual system that we project as this experience of reality that just so happens to be on a delay. It is on a delay. So you're lagging. Your reality is actually lagging behind what is existing around you. Isn't that interesting? And most importantly, I love this, your idea of reality is actually compiled based on your expectations, your beliefs. And to put it simply, whenever there's a deviation in those expectations or beliefs, whenever something is occurring outside of the realm of what you believe is possible, your brain actually reconstructs the image to make it coherent, to make it make sense. And what this means in the studies is that certain bits of information are omitted. Now, this is not new, right? If you understand anything about neuroscience, you know that the brain has to eliminate information. It does this all the time. The reason that you're here listening, well, some of you might have multiple windows up, you might be working, you might be doing other, you might be driving, you might be doing other things, right? But let's imagine for a moment that you're just locked in with me one-on-one. All of the other stuff that you're perceiving in your environment, the noise, the hum of fluorescent lights, if you happen to be in a horrific office type of setting. Sorry, I just find it like inhumane personally, especially if you're neurodivergent. I just feel like the world was not made for neurodivergent folks because some of the sounds and the sensory perturbations are just unreal. Anyway, so you're sitting and you're hearing all of this environmental noise. You might have traffic, you might hear birds, you might hear something, the kids, a phone call, somebody at the door. Well, when you're locked in, attentionally speaking, your brain, as a sophisticated processing computer, will actually limit a lot of that information. In fact, when you go to get up and get a drink of water, when you go to bathe, when you go to do anything that requires intentional motor movement, you have areas of your brain that actually take this stream of information and concentrate it so you can be task-oriented and goal-driven. Okay, now why is this important in the context of shifting timelines? Because when you understand how the brain works, and you understand that the brain is wired to eliminate things that are going to take you off task, And you understand that your perception of a reality is on a delay. So not only are you lagging, but you're actually missing things that fall outside of your scope, your brain's idea of what is supposed to be there. And I need to refresh myself on the studies, but there's this really interesting paper that says they did this like test on humans. I'm not trying to quote the science. I read about it in a second source, and I need to go and find it. And I haven't found it yet. I just haven't had the time. But they took participants and they did something to their vision where they like put goggles on. I think it was goggles, like VR goggles. And then they inverted the visual field. And after so they were looking at everything upside down through this set of goggles. I think it was like after an hour to an hour and a half, you know what happened? The field reinserted itself right side up, but there was no change in the goggles and the presentation of the material. Why is this important? Why? Somebody please tell me. If we were in a classroom, I would ask you to raise your hand, but we're not. You can put it in the chat if you want to, but you don't have to. I just get excited about this because literally science shows that your brain is wired to bootstrap you into a construct of what it thinks is normal, okay? This is the big finding that I find as a neuroscientist is the most critical piece of understanding for knowing why we might be shifting timelines like here. You know, you have at any given moment lines of energy that are going to lead you like a wormhole into a portal of a construct of reality. How does this happen? If it's true, if the metaphysical teachers are right, and we do have the ability to shift timelines on the order of seconds or minutes or, you know, without any time at all, then why is it that we only perceive that there's one plane of existence? It's because when we understand how the brain is wired to literally make you perceive things that are actually an illusion. And this is Annette Seth's presentation. Reality is an illusion. You're living in a simulation. The simulation is held in your mind. And he's not a consciousness, like he does research consciousness, but he's not like reality shifting quantum consciousness. No, this is my flavor on top of actual credible neuroscientist work. And they would probably like throw me out and laugh at me for doing this. But I actually believe that this is an untapped area of human biology that we don't know about yet, at least not in mainstream science. And I didn't try to find this. This is something that happened to me. And as somebody who was a formerly trained neuroscientist, I got very excited because if it was true that I was shifting in between worlds independently, I wasn't being trained on social media. I wasn't going to Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreats and then, you know, coming out of it and saying, I can reality shift. Let me tell you all about it. No, this is like something I was in the confines of my apartment in Dallas, Texas, having this major spiritual awakening, undergoing this intense awakening, profound shift and understanding of reality, and then experiencing that my world was shifting and then having to piece it together that when I saw different versions of my neighbors or my apartment, got a different copy of my keys, had a different mailbox, but I had two sets of keys after a really big quantum jump. And this was an extreme quantum jump. I end up with 2 sets of keys for my apartment and 2 sets of keys for a mailbox. I have this on video, a key to somebody else's apartment that are mailbox that used to be mine. So I go and open up my mailbox that I always know is mine. I open it up. That's not my mail in there. What? It's some other woman's mail. How is that possible? I have another key. Which mailbox is it? I'm in this, apartment complex where you have this like row of mailboxes. So I'm like literally testing each one. I'm like, where's my mailbox? Because I needed my mail. I had packages from, like the Wish app, and I was excited and I was trying to retrieve them. And so I'm figuring all this out. This is following a major quantum shift when other things were strange, came into my apartment that was a different version, found handwritten notes by me in my handwriting that I didn't write, other stuff on the counter, like some really wild stuff. And different like security officers at my building who I had never seen before, different version of like my 7-Eleven and people who didn't recognize me anymore. Don't know if that was actually tied to that after that specific jump. But anyway, so I'm testing the mailboxes and then I find a random mailbox that I've never opened before in my conscious awareness. And my mail comes out of it, the mail that's actually was meant for me. But I still have access to this other woman's mail. My apartment complex did not sit me down and say, okay, I know you've been here for 2 years. You're going to get a new mailbox. Let me have the other key back. No, they didn't do that. So as I am awakening, and that's an extreme example, but many people actually shift realities on a much lower order. And this is what my EC by Dr. C podcast is all about. If you're interested in quantum shifting, if you want to train your brain and understand the foibles of it and how it's working against you to keep you locked in to a perceptual experience that there is only one plane of existence, then this podcast could be for you. It's the top link in my Stand store. The link is in the bio, and you get quantum meditations delivered to your inbox, as well as the right of first call access to events that I'll be hosting. Eventually, I don't have any of those planned, but also virtual events. It could be for you. Very intimate recordings about the nature of my findings and the open questions that I have, and an invitation for you to get to the next level of your humanity and unlocking whatever that is for you. I don't purport to have all the answers. I have sometimes more questions than I do answers, but I share with you my findings sometimes in real time. Hi, Yan, nice to see you. And so what happens is when you are quantum shifting, your brain is wired to make you perceive that you're in the same plane of existence that you've always been in. And the why this is, the how this is, other than, the construct of our neurobiology, I'm not here to say one way or the other. I don't know why it's this way. But when you take participants in a lab, you put goggles on them and you show them an image, but it's upside down and their brain forces it to be right side up. That's the biggest clue, in my opinion, that our brain is bootstrapping us to believe that the world that might be upside down is right side up, that the world that might be multidimensional is unidimensional. If our brain can turn an image that's forced fed to us that is upside down, if it can turn it right side up because our brain is like, nope, error, nope, this is not how it's supposed to work. Let's just make a little correction right here. Your brain does this. Your brain actually corrects your reality. It literally adjusts it. It adjusts it so you perceive what it believes is okay to be normal. This is radical when you think about it. When you think about combining science and the metaphysical teachings and also just physics, and understanding that we are living in a multidimensional universe. But what does that mean for us? We're just in the single dimension. We're in the third and fourth dimension, to speak a little more technically. But we believe that the same dimension that we woke up in is the same dimension that we go to sleep in. Who believes that? Everybody, until you start to awaken to quantum shifting. Everybody believes that the same plane of existence that I woke up in this morning is the same one that I went to sleep in last night. Isn't that incredible? It's just this default explanation. And we make these stories about the nature of reality because we are perceptual beings and we create stories all the time based on what we perceive and what we feel and what our intuition is telling us. And some of us who are from binary structures, so binary, what does that mean? If you understand anything about computer science, you automatically know what this means. But if you don't, it comes down to this. Back in the day when computers were developed, they were developed through circuit boards of electricity. And this gating of electricity was switched on or switched off by a 0 or a 1. And what happens is when you have a 0 and a 1 configuration, a go or a no-go, or a no-go and a go, then this is a binary system. It's a binary yes or no, stop or go, decision-making framework. And you can build a lot of complexity off of this, but when you reduce it down to a 0 and a 1, a yes and a no, it is a binary structure. Well, I happen to believe that humans build technology that is a reflection of their structures of their mind. And the complexity of that technology is actually a reflection of their cognitive frameworks. And for a long time, binary thinking has been the dominant force of the structures of our psychology and our sociology. So you're either, back in the day, you're either a man or a woman. You are either heterosexual, or you are either right or wrong. You are either Christian, or you are either married, or, and so we force ourselves into, yes, exactly, Siren Song. Exactly. I love this. I love this. You force yourself into this dualistic pattern. And this is what ascended masters and religions like Buddhism have been teaching for eons, and others. You know, it's not exclusive to Buddhism, but they've been telling us for a long time, we need to transcend duality. We need to transcend, because it actually creates a lot of social problems. It creates a lot of dogma. It creates a lot of right and wrong, and that's not the way that the order of the universe works, but that's how our machinery and our thought structures are patterned. So as a result, the way we approach problems and the way we build technology is reflective of what's inside. And when we are, thank you so much for the gift, when we are binary in nature, we're very perturbed by any sort of expansion beyond what we were taught. And I reference this a lot because I see it even in the spiritual awakening community. People who are awakening into consciousness, they will hear a story about religion or about, let's say, twin flames. I see it here a lot. And they'll say, no, this is what it is. You can't possibly have a deviating storyline, because this is what reality is. The twin flame is two souls that are split in two different bodies. That's it. You can't have more than one twin flame. There's just no way, because that's not the story. This is binary thinking. This is normal. When we come from binary reductionist materialist societies, we all come from that kernel of cognition. But part of the awakening journey is expanding beyond that. And there are many examples of this, right? People are uncomfortable when they are confronted. Let's say that they are cisgender, heteronormative. They are uncomfortable when they are confronted with ambiguity, with somebody who is genderless, or somebody who wants to be undefined, because they represent the unity and the integration of both energies and both genders, and they want that fluidity. And that's distinct from their sexual orientation, right? But people who are very locked into binary reductionist thinking have a hard time with this, because they're like, well, what are you? You know, and when that is paired with any sort of violence, aggression, or, you know, the lower order sentience that's reacting from fear, what you can see is exclusion. You can see harm to other beings. And as a result, it becomes an us against other. I could go on about that, but I want to go back to shifting timelines. So when we understand the thought structures of our mind and how our operating system is running at a baseline, we then understand how our brain is wired to create the stories that put us in little boxes. And for example, for a long time, people thought that medical doctors had all of the answers, and that natural medicine was, you know, like hearsay. It was junk science, even though that was being taught by ancients and shamans and mystics and healers in indigenous cultures without the advent of science and medicine. But somehow science and medicine, with its rational thought, came along and put a big stamp over everything and said, this is knowledge. And because it fits perfectly in this binary reductionist framework, anything that's outside of that is junk, bunk. it's fringe, it's, all of the stuff. Even though it's crazy when you think about it. Willow's bark, a white willow's bark, was like the inspiration for aspirin. And herbs can be like the inspiration for healing and medicine that the pharmaceuticals are built off of. And even they're making, I can't say it because I'll get banned, but the little, how do I say this? The little mushrooms that are controversial, let's say, pharmaceutical companies are actually, they've been doing this for years now, making synthetic mushrooms that are a little controversial. And at some point, we're going to lose that connection. If we continue on this line, we're going to lose that connection with the other parts of life and living. And so it compresses. When we're in binary thought structures, we compress things down to what is right. And this is the foundation of dogma. And dogmatic thinking is very emblematic of binary thought structures. And it's extremely hard to break out of. And when your brain is wired and conditioned to perceive that there's only one plane of existence, you will struggle with things like quantum shifting. It actually takes repeated exposures and adjusting your thought patterns. This is also a great plug for my EC by Dr. C, because I help you do this by listening to me and seeing the world multidimensionality. And because it's so easy to default that we only have one timeline. Like we're going to, thank you so much, that we're going to hell in a handbasket. Like we don't have any options. Imagine for a moment that there is some big pull, power grab, right? I'm not saying that there is, but imagine that there is, and that there's a manifested hellscape that's on the horizon waiting for us. Wouldn't it be entirely convenient to channel and condition people to believe over repeated exposures that there was no other option? It's either heaven or hell. You see how that's binary dualism? When you start opening up to multidimensional living, you start to realize that every moment is an opportunity for a timeline shift. And this is what I love about this image that I created with ChatGPT, because this is you, right? This is you in your everyday waking world. And from every moment to moment, you're driving your avatar, and you're actually selecting which wormhole of reality to go into. You're actually traversing timelines based on your decisions, based on your alignment. So yesterday we talked about alignment. If you want to listen to that replay, I have it on YouTube. You can search for this username, Next Level by Dr. C. Doctor is all spelled out. You can go to my Stan stores too. So click on the link in the bio, and at the top it has like all the socials, and my YouTube is also linked there. And I'm going to be uploading all of the long replays to the YouTube playlist so you can catch anything that you've missed. So yesterday we talked about alignment. What alignment is now in timeline shifting is the ability to traverse a timeline and stay on that line. But to stay on that line, you have to be very clear internally about what you're creating and who you are and what you value and what you're trying to do. And this is what the whole consciousness expansion journey is all about, right? Hi, Alexi. Thank you so much for the gifts. And hi, holding the field. Alignment, exactly. And so when you understand alignment, you understand the foundation of your manifestations, because you understand how to synchronize your internal being that's driving your avatar and all of its wants, its desires, its preferences with the external world, and how to then stay synchronized on a line of reality, a timeline that you're trying to get to. So if this is a vortex of a manifested world that you're trying to get to with all of the pleasures or the luxury or the love or the safety or the commitment, whatever you are wanting to experience, and different people want to experience different things. Whatever that is for you, alignment is about the ability to keep yourself on a line of a manifested construct of a reality. But if, for example, you wake up and you just naturally believe that you're over here because this has been reinforced over time through conditioning. This is you again. This is like your baseline, your default, right? And so you're experiencing things that you don't want to experience, or you're being told that you're going in a direction that you don't necessarily want to go in, like the world's going to a hell in a handbasket. Well, when this is reinforced that there is only one plane of existence and you happen to be on that plane of existence, my God, Jesus Christ. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but it's true. Imagine for a moment that you've been conditioned your whole life that, sorry, you don't have free will. I know that the world looks the way it does, but you're going down with it. Oh, you think you can manifest? Yeah, except you're stuck. So when you are in unidimensional consciousness, you're going to more apt to stick that narrative in your projector system. And when this has been wired and reinforced over birth, right? Even if you learn about manifesting, even if you learn about the ability to get to other timelines, you're going to have a really hard time with it. You're going to have to update your operating system and the way you perceive reality. Another plug for my EC by Dr. C, because this is exactly what I help you do. I help you rebuild your thought structures to become a multidimensional being, not just in theory, not just in meditation, but in practice. How to quantum shift in your reality. And I believe that we're on the leading line of what it means to be human, but I'm not the only one that teaches about that. There's so many others out there. If you're in the know, you're in the know. I just have my particular flavor because I'm a formally trained neuroscientist. And I believe that I've discovered some things that are challenges that need to be overcome. And I believe I have some answers about how to do that, but I'm still figuring it out. And you're welcome to join me in that ride. The link is in the bio, EC by Dr. C, exclusive access, $10 a month to get access to the private vault of recordings, discount on ongoing coaching sessions. You get a 10% discount on any coaching session that's recurring month by month. And you get meditations, quantum meditations delivered to your inbox. I think that that's a steal, in my personal opinion. So, hi, Ashley. Thank you. When you wake up every day and you believe that you're in the same plane of existence, you actually limit the opportunities. You close these off. And even though you might know that you're a multidimensional being, you don't know how to close the gap in your thinking and your cognitive dissonance necessarily to drive your avatar from line to line to line. So when we're talking about reality shifting, what we're talking about is we're jumping lines. And when we're talking about manifesting, what we're talking about is creating the vortex of the material world that can tether us in a lifeline so we can actually experience it physically. Manifest. To manifest means to bring it into the physical. What does that actually mean? That actually means to bring it into our conscious mind, to have it accept it, to have it receive it. When I was doing some of the initial quantum shifting, what I couldn't figure out is why I would see a world and then it would retract, almost as though I was anchored into a baseline reality. So I would start to get a peek of another world. But my nervous system couldn't always hold it. Sometimes, especially if it was too vastly different, I would literally feel my adrenaline go. Like, I would literally feel my heart rate shoot up and be like, whoa. Like a couple times I saw like a alien type of world, and I was interfacing with extra dimensional beings in some of those. I perceive them to be friendly, but even just seeing their world come in on top of my world was too much for my sensory system to process. So I would get a glimpse of it, and then it was like this reaction would happen. I'd be like, oh my God, what's going on? And I would see like beings next to me sometimes, and it was just like a little flash where I saw many different types of forms. Sometimes when I was driving in my car, I saw this like little creature, this little ET creature on my passenger side of my car on the floorboard as I'm driving in Death Valley National Park, having these crazy quantum experiences, seeing like what I think are like UFOs in the sky. And then I would shift into this perspective of this reality. And there was other things that were happening, like there was chaos and strife then. And so I was also a little scared. And then I'd see this being in close proximity to me and I'd freak out. Even though my mind wanted to explore, my body was like, nope, eject, this is too much. And it's like, if you've been here from the beginning, And you know about this study where they took researchers and they put the goggles, I'm pretty sure it's goggles, but I want to double check that, fact check that. They adjusted their vision, but they showed them an image that was upside down, a world that was upside down. They kept in this like goggle set for a long time. But after like an hour and a half, the brain actually reset the visual field. It actually reset it. So when I was quantum shifting, it was like my brain would reset things. It would be like there was some error code that I couldn't figure out where it was happening. And this is before I really understood about these studies. You know, like I educated myself. My area of neuroscience expertise was in the striatum and Parkinson's disease and neuroinflammation. But I had a multidisciplinary program, top 15 program. Like I went to a great school. So as a result, I started educating myself and understanding like what are the processes that could explain what I'm experiencing and how can I tie it all together. So I started looking into the actual science, the actual like pathways that I wanted to understand what the research was. And I've since, fitted into my framework, but the researchers never intended it to be in a quantum shifting framework. As a former scientist, I just have to say that because it's an ethics thing. I'm not here trying to tell you that I understand the quantum shifting side of the world from a scientific perspective, because to my knowledge, nobody studied that. And if they have, it's probably somebody like the CIA or somebody, that is keeping a treasure trove of data, experimenting on the expansive nature of humans, which we have documents knowing that they've been doing for decades, right? And so if anybody studied it, I don't have access to that material. But I believe that I understand how the brain could result in what I was experiencing as a quantum shifter, awakening to quantum shifting. I believe that there is a baseline reality that you are anchored into, and that your visual field, just like the participants in the study, your visual field, your brain, whenever it has an error code, it will adjust things to keep you locked in. That's the most important thing. You're wired to stay locked in. And through education and through training and through practice, through quantum meditations, through rebuilding your thought systems, I believe, this is a belief, I believe that you can change all of that. But it's hard. And I've been doing it for years now. And it's not so straightforward, in my personal opinion. There are roadblocks in our cognition. There are roadblocks in our society. There are roadblocks in the ability to process certain levels of information. So when your brain takes an image and reorients it, when you start quantum shifting, actually in the flesh, there are people who quantum shift without movement. I did this at first too. You can port your consciousness into other timelines. You can get a glimpse of other lifelines. Lots of people do this. You can go into Hogwarts, like in the safety and the confines of your room, and you can go and explore other worlds. I've done that. I'm not Hogwarts, but I've explored other galaxies. I've explored other timelines. I've explored a lot. But when you start embodying yourself as a quantum shifter and literally navigating your personal avatar in the material world, shifting through parallel timelines, to me, this is a game changer, because it's really challenging. It's like more challenging than learning how to drive a car for the first time. And to me, my personal opinion is that it's almost like you're in a self-driving vehicle, but you don't know you're in a self-driving vehicle because you perceive that you have autonomy, because you perceive that you can elect at any time to go to the fridge and make yourself food, or go to the store, or get a job, or you're like navigating in this box that's been constructed for you because you're birthed into it, right? This is your community, your home, your environment, your world. You're birthed into it. And it's like we believe that we're sovereign beings because we can go anywhere in the box. Well, some people don't even have that ability, but you understand that within your community, you can choose to date this person, you can go to school, you can do this, you can get this career. And it feels, from that perspective, if your point of awareness is that person, like a little rat in a cage that's walking around a cage, right? And you don't perceive that there's anything beyond the cage, then you perceive yourself as a sovereign being. Why wouldn't you? You can go anywhere you want. You can do almost, yes, there are challenges. You can become a billionaire. You can become the president. Well, could you? I mean, that's the question, right? So then there are these challenges to, if you want those lifelines, then how do you align yourself and your actions, your words, your intent, your vibration, all of that to actually make it happen? And that's where the manifestation culture spends a lot of its time focused on. You're in a box. How do you make the best choices and optimize your box? What I'm proposing is that there's a next level human. Some of us have already been experimenting with. Some of us have already gotten a preview of. We don't fully know how it works, but there's boxes beyond the boxes. I don't know how many. I don't know how many are available to you. I know that some of us have even died and have experienced what appears to be quantum immortality. Does it mean I still have it? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not gonna try to find out. I don't recommend you try to find out either. But I've spoken to numerous people actually that have died. But in our box, that's not possible because this is a binary reductionist materialist box. There is no dead and alive. There is only dead or alive. That's a very important qualifier. That or function is extremely pertinent. It is defining your very existence. You're either alive or dead. Schrodinger's cat only exists in theory and equations. It's not actually real. Until you start opening up beyond the box. And this is what Dr. Donald Hoffman teaches about. I reference his work a lot. Again, I even reach out to him, but I don't think he would support my work because he's like mainstream. He's like famous cognitive evolutionary neuroscientist that pretty much says reality is an illusion and equates it to putting on headsets that generate what we need for survival, not what actually exists. And he actually believes, he toes the line in this, he kind of dances around it, but he believes that we live in something akin to a matrix/simulation that collapses when we're not observing it. That even neurons themselves are not really real. And space-time, that box that I was just communicating about, this box that we all live in, that one, yeah. He says that box isn't real. Actually, that it's doomed in the perspective of where physics is going. That we've constructed it because that's how our processing center, see, now we're back here. Not his words, mine. But you see how there's an overlap? He actually believes, you can watch his podcasts. They're very dense if you're not an academic. Even if you are an academic, if you're not in his field, it's still very dense. But he has a couple of really good ones. Look for the ones that are more approachable. There was one, Tom Ballou, I think, is one of his more approachable ones, a more recent one. The more recent ones, he gets better at delivering his message. So he believes that there's something about the way we compute reality, this computer right here, that's actually not at all what exists. And that, like a headset, putting on a headset that's computing this sense of what we collectively call reality, this is indeed giving us this perceptual experience of space-time, which makes sense. If you're in the box, like we talked about, and you're like, I want to be a physicist. Yeah. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go on this lifeline. I'm going to learn mathematics. I'm going to do great in my undergraduate studies. Oh, I started falling off there. I'm going to reorient myself. I'm going to go. Boom. I am a world-class physicist. This is my manifested reality. I made it. You're in the box. What are you doing in the box as a physicist? You're walking around the box with your tools and your instruments, knocking on the edges, measuring everything, and you're saying, this box, space-time, we have the speed of light, we have this, we have that, we have newtons, we have quantum, we have, okay, some things don't make sense. Why don't they make sense? I don't know. They just don't make sense. What do you mean they don't make sense? You're a physicist. Well, could it be because there's something about the box? Something about the nature of this world that we perceive that is feeding back in on itself. Perhaps an illusion. Perhaps some equations are not actually constant. Perhaps there's boxes outside the box. So now when we talk about quantum shifting, and this is me as a neuroscientist now talking to you, it is imperative to understand how your brain is computing reality. And when you understand that it is literally designed to bootstrap you in, I just have to say it because somebody needs to go. The live will be, yes, Eric, that is one interpretation. That is one interpretation that we've been brainwashed this entire time. That is one narrative. That's one, but there are options. That's the beautiful thing about opening yourself up to multidimensional living. Anybody that needs to leave or anybody that's just tuning in and you're really interested because this is like life-changing, like when it's for you, you know it's for you, right? You know it. Even if you don't understand everything, you're like, I need to listen to that. I have it on YouTube. I will post this on YouTube. I have yesterday's already up on YouTube, the full live replay available to you. Just search Next Level by Dr. C. Doctor is all spelled out. Or you can click the link in my bio. Go to my stand store. At the very top, it has all my socials, including a Spotify link to a podcast for Awakening. And you'll find my YouTube channel there. And then you can subscribe to my channel and subscribe to that playlist, and you'll have access to this. So when you understand how your brain is computing reality, you understand how it's compressing your perceptual experience into one plane of existence, then by golly, it makes sense. 11:11. That's not what makes sense. Hi, Patty. It makes sense that you would wake up perceiving that you were in the same reality that you went to sleep in. But what if that wasn't true? What if, and this is what Aaron Doughty discovers in his awakening to quantum shifting, if you follow him at all. Not everybody does. If you're in the spiritual awakening community, he talks about coming to his own understanding of this, that it's like a film strip, that every waking moment is an opportunity to choose a timeline. This is just 3 spread out in front of you. But the way that I actually see it is that it's a honeycomb arrangement where you have multiple lines and multiple opportunities available to you. But when you are locked in to one, you strengthen this anchor point and you start to cloud out others. This is why I believe you need to be at a certain level of ripeness in your awakening to be able to synthesize this information. Because what ends up happening is that you become so anchored in to your perceptual field of how things are. Like, you have to be careful. Andy, if you need help, EC by Dr. C, I recommend check the link in the bio. It's a membership where I can give you mentoring about quantum shifting, and we can work together one-on-one. I do this asynchronously over voice note coaching, which is perfect if you're neurodivergent, if you're extremely busy, or if you just like time to process, and also if you're a quantum shifter. So we exchange voice notes for an hour if you book one session a month, but you can book more sessions a month. And I help you through the rebuilding of your thought process and integration and locking you into a quantum reality structure. I've been helping people reality shift for several years now. I started on my YouTube playlist, but that was faceless content. And now this is like revision 2. So I have been helping people. Not everybody can do it, is my point that I'm getting to. When you're very, very anchored in to a reality structure, like the conspiracy theory reality structure, you're going to literally be on this road that's taking you to a manifested world that you're collectively manifesting with others that are on the line. This is how I believe it works, but I believe that there are some caveats to this. If, for example, you're in a world that you think is green, but it's actually red, and somebody's kind of tricked you, you think you have free will, you're sovereign, that, systems are fair and everything is just, but it's not. I'm not saying that this is the current state of events, but let's say one of your karmic spiritual lessons is discernment and understanding the true nature of things. So like your intuition, then you could actually be on a conspiracy theory timeline, but you won't know that you're on a conspiracy theory timeline until it's revealed to you. that you're not on a green line, you're actually on a red line. And there is some merit to having the truth unveiled. Meaning, if you're in a place that appears by illusion to be one thing when it's something else, then you deserve to know. Everybody does. Actually, the truth deserves to be witnessed. And so you want to be sure that you're prepared to integrate that information and to keep moving on a timeline that you prefer. So let's say you find something out. You think you're over here. I'm going to this manifested new earth. We're going to go to the new earth. Everything's going to be high vibe. Wait a second. I just found out that something big that I didn't know was happening. Corruption, systemic abuse, injustice. Maybe those conspiracy theorists are right. So all of a sudden, your perspective is shifted over here, right? This is how you balance, by the way, if you're experiencing this, because this is a real thing. Excuse me. So your perspective is shifted. You have to integrate this new piece of information, this disorientation. Where am I at? It's important when you're reality shifting, you always have to let reality concur with you, because depending on where you're at and how things are working for you, there's a little bit of a lag, and you're going to be anchored into a baseline reality. So there's going to be a disparity. At some points, just to give you an example, when I was awake to this, I would see the clocks change on where I was staying. So it would be an hour ahead and an hour behind. I walked across a store in Sedona, a hotbed for vortex energy, where quantum shifting, I believe, is easier. I believe this. I'm not asserting it as a fact, but I believe that vortex areas are on ley lines that, dimensionally speaking, like these energetic cords, there's a convergence point that allows you to go from one cord to the other. Versus, let's say, I'm just going to pick a random place like Tahiti. Tahiti, yes, you can jump timelines, but you kind of have to get on a plane to do it. You know what I mean? Versus Sedona, where there's a close overlap between dimensions and fields, which allow you to slip through space-time in a slipstream. That's what I call it. So in Sedona, when I was experiencing slipstreaming, I bought something at one store. I walked maybe 200 feet, maybe less, to another store. And when I looked at the receipts, it looked like I went backwards in time. Whilst I was also experiencing, literally by an hour, like I walked across a date line, which wasn't possible. It wasn't daylight savings time. It was the middle of the day. You know, the POS systems, maybe you could, there's always going to be some rational, logical explanation. But if you were there with me, perceiving everything, and you were integrating this model of quantum shifting, I think you would have a different answer. And so when you are doing quantum shifting, you're going to have this battle of the mind when you're experiencing these disparities. And how you integrate this information is critical to becoming a successful quantum shifter. And this is where a lot of people get hung up when they actually really start shifting timelines, and their timelines are very distinct. So normally, when timelines are very close together, like let's say you're right at this merging point between blue and red, right? When they're very close together, I believe that it's imperceptible. My personal belief is that there's an order and a structure to the universe to keep a level of coherence. This is a personal belief that I have based on how I've observed my own experiences and other people's experiences. What this means is that the universe keeps things relatively consistent from dimension to dimension to dimension. But small things will be out of order. You remember those books as a kid when you would open them up and it would be like, can you find what's different from page to page? And when you first look at it, it looks identical, right? But you have to train your eye and you're like, oh, you have to find the 5 objects that are out of order. And they're like small and random. And it's like, oh, the book that was on the bookshelf over here is now on the windowsill over here. Oh, the dishwasher that was closed over here is now slightly ajar over here. This is what quantum shifting is like when you're new at it, when you're still working the framework into your mode. You're going to feel like you're ADHD. You might be ADHD. You might also be quantum shifting. You're going to feel like, that's so weird. I put my keys on the counter and now they're hung up. That's so weird. I can't find my phone. That's so weird. I swore I just heard somebody call me, but you go to pick up the phone and there's nobody on your call record. I swore. And your explanation for things is often, when you're new at this, going to be predominantly in the binary structures. What does this mean? So if you're just catching up, this is your world. This is a materialist, reductionist world. You live in this box. You were born in this box. You don't ever know, like M. Night Shyamalan's movie, The Village. You don't ever know that there's anything outside of where you're living. You believe the space-time continuum is all that there is, and that's it. The discussion is closed. Yes, there's some weird stuff in physics, but we don't know how to explain it. I don't know. They don't know. Nobody knows. Okay, so we're just going to discard that information and keep the constructed reality that we collectively agree on. You're in the box. You start to get a peek that maybe the box isn't what you think it is. But because you've been raised in the box, raised to believe that there is only the box, your mind will do jumping jacks to contort your thought structures to keep you in the box. This is, if you don't understand this now, it's okay. You will get there. This is the trickiest part of understanding how your mind is actually creating narratives to explain your reality. So if it takes you a couple of listens, I literally am going to post this on my YouTube channel. You can listen to it as much as you want to. You can also check out my EC by Dr. C playlist if you want a private mentorship opportunity and you want access to private vault recordings of this in like raw form, a very personal form. $10 a month, you get access to this private vault. Very reasonable. You get quantum meditations delivered to your inbox. And if I have quantum events in the future, like I'm planning on doing, depending on how all of this goes, you get right of first access, right of first refusal, meaning you get told about these events first. You're first on the list if you want to be. And more, you get discounts on ongoing work. If you want me to literally help you quantum shift, especially if you're already quantum shifting, then you're going to want help with this. So as a result, when you are understanding how your mind is keeping you in this box, the link is in the bio, by the way, it's in my Stand store, the very top link. When you understand how your mind is keeping you here, then anything that tries to pull you outside, your mind is going to have an answer for. This is the most insidious part about the nature of the mind. This is what I feel like, and I hate to say it because I have so much reverence and respect for Buddhism, because I feel like their ascended masters and the Buddhas, they figured out things about the nature of this world and reality that is unparalleled. That where I come from in modern day science, I feel like they're onto something. But I don't know if they got this detail about the nature of the mind. But I'm not a devout student of Buddhism, so I don't want to say that they missed this detail, but it's a question that I have. I believe that the nature of the mind is such that it actually fixes you in the way that it perceives reality and constructs a narrative to be coherent, to lock you into a perceptual experience that is an illusion. Science backs this up in its own way. I talked about this earlier in the live, not going to repeat it here for those who have been here for a bit. Literally, science backs this up. And when you understand how your mind is computing your reality, then you understand that your explanations for things that are out of place and out of order are entirely relevant. Entirely relevant, because when you are oriented towards fear-based, scarcity-based, like people taking things from you, then when you find out that like money is missing, even though you find it later, right? Let's say you have cash that you're looking for. You're like, I swore I left it here. And where is it? Who took it from me? See that? Who took it from me? And you start like questioning people in your mind or in reality. That's reflective of a wound that you have active that's interpreting your reality, that's keeping you on a timeline to play out certain manifested events that are karmic loops. Because that baseline narrative and your reaction to all of that is keeping you stuck in a perception of reality that an alternative explanation could be, I don't have a website, I just have my socials. You can check my Stand store for all of my offers and how to get in touch with me, including email. You will then create this perceptual experience that you start preferentially engaging with, drawing people to you to reinforce that actually keep you fundamentally locked into these karmic loops, cycles, and patterns. And you can do this your entire life and not be awake to this. And that extra information of, hey, maybe the box isn't what you think it is. When you're unconscious to this, you know what happens? You just discard that. You're like, well, they don't know why. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense. Where is my cash? Where is who took it? Who moved it? Who did this? Who did this? Right? When you start to awaken a quantum shifting, you start to, I call this like keeping your balance, right? You want to keep your balance and your interpretations of your narrative structures. And you want to say, maybe it's this, or maybe it's that. Maybe it is, somebody taking something from me, or maybe I actually experience a quantum shift event and my perceptual system hasn't fully registered it yet. So what you do is you actually train yourself to see things differently, to experience your perceptual system differently, which then, if you do adhere to things like the manifesting principles, the law of attraction, you're going to strengthen those neural pathways. You're going to actually shift your identity as somebody who can traverse timelines. Boom. And you're not going to ever be, this is a belief, no promises, in a timeline where you are really stuck in by somebody else's design. You might still have subconscious patterns that are manifesting on your behalf. And if so, you should really work on those and talk about those with somebody like a coach. I am accepting new clients. Link is in the bio for a one-on-one consult if you want. So you want to understand your subconscious patterning and your roots and your alignment to understand what line you're on. And when you understand what line you're on, even if you have something unveiled and you find out this horrific thing about where you're at, you find out, oh my God, I'm not over here. I'm actually over here. What kind of world am I living in? It's upside down. You can actually shift using your free will and your sovereignty and your creative energy as a manifesting being. This is my belief. This is my opinion. Synthesizing multiple pieces of information at a personal level and other people's teachings, you can actually correct. Nobody has the right to keep you locked in and anchored into a timeline that you are not actually manifesting, intending on manifesting, or even subconsciously generating for the benefit of your soul. I have to put that caveat because for those of you who are disempowered, that are still working on leveling up the self, leveling up the consciousness on certain key fundamental lessons, then you will be confronted with situations that are unjust, that are terrorizing, that are oppressive, because you are designed to confront those, like in a simulation, to beat the boss. And the boss is actually very easy to beat. Sometimes it's just speaking up for yourself. Sometimes it's just saying no, literally. But if you can't even say no, then obviously you're not going to get to this place that you're manifesting, because you're manifesting from a position of wanting to avoid the work. And when you're like, I don't want these challenges in my life anymore, so I'm just going to hop lifelines over there, your subconscious mind is actually a sophisticated quantum traveler, in my opinion. I actually really believe that the subconscious mind is the holder to a lot of these keys, to the map, to the understanding, to your intuition, understanding of like where you're going, your destiny, your purpose. And the integration of the subconscious mind is a big part of the awakening journey, in my personal opinion. So your subconscious mind is going to anchor you into timelines that you perceive are unfavorable or unjust or oppressive, because you're learning how to become the next level version of you. And before you've learned how to do that, you are going to feel, like I did, intense suffering, like this isn't fair. Where did I sign up for this? And then when you master the lesson, you're going to look back and you're going to say, oh, I see. That version of me needed to grow, evolve, and change. And the version of me that exists today, who can be on camera, sharing this with you, who was so frightened to step outside of the academic culture that I had identified with, so frightened to like step into the esoteric, so frightened to be an artist, to like use cymatics and sound waves to trigger the subconscious mind, awakening nonverbal communication, but like in a different ancient language. So frightened to do that. Like I couldn't do that when I was my old self. And transforming out of that old self has enabled this evolution and this timeline shift. But before I made that switch, before I confronted those challenges, I perceived myself as stuck because I was subconsciously keeping myself stuck by avoiding growing in the ways that I really needed to grow. That's why having a spiritual mentor and a coach can really take you to the next level, because I'm like, especially if it's me, I'm relentless. I have a gift of seeing the shadow, and I will trigger you and help you see it. Most people are afraid to trigger other people. I used to be that way too. But triggering is one of the fastest ways that we can do work. And when you're open to that, and not everybody's triggerable, but if you are, I will definitely trigger you and confront you and ask you to look at parts of yourself that may be in your shadow. I never tell you you're in your shadow. Well, sometimes, I guess, if it's really, really obvious. Like if you're stealing, if you're, like out of alignment or integrity, but I'll bring things up to help you examine. That can get you to the next level a lot faster. So you will be stuck in lifelines if your soul, your consciousness is getting you to evolve and change. But assuming you've done the work, as a lot of people on the spiritual awakening journey have, then you have a lot of mobility available to you. And the how you get there in your waking reality sometimes befuddles us. And I believe the key is actually in quantum shifting. So in the last 30 minutes or so, I'd like to take some questions. I'm going to go through the chat and just select some random questions. What do I mean by triggered? Andy asks. Triggered is this internal state of discontent, aggravation, frustration, turmoil, feeling a disconnect. Sometimes it's a rupture in intimacy, like it's a pullback, it's a withdrawal, because you are experiencing an event in your reality that almost trips a wire or a landmine inside of you that causes a reaction that when you're unconscious, you're not very clear about why it happens. And when you're very, very unconscious, you just react. And there's no awareness sometimes that you're even triggered. It's like the best way to describe it. Not everybody's going to relate to this, and it's okay if you don't. But when people are still struggling on awakening and they're driving a car, and they're in rush hour traffic and somebody cuts in front of them and they're hypersensitive to being triggered, they can just shift into a different reactivity brain state. Their limbic system takes over. They turn sometimes into a murderous being, even if they don't, intend on it. They start reacting very dangerously, sometimes very confrontationally, in a destructive, chaotic, violent sort of way. And so it's like, this is a more extreme common example, but you can be triggered without this. It's like a reactivity in the reptilian brain that takes over your conscious mind. Parents get pushed to this point too, where you want to be regulated, but then your child does that one thing at that worst time, and then boom, you're saying things, you're turning into this person that you don't necessarily understand and that you don't have full control over. So being triggered is about eliciting those brain states. And I find that when you are defensive, when you are reactive, like in my coaching work, I never get to the point where people are seeing red or anything. It's not like that, but it's oh, I'm having a feeling I don't understand about that. Let's unpack that. Oh, I'm confronting something about myself. My reaction, my defensiveness, I feel the need to withdraw. I feel the need to retreat. And it's often a rooted pattern that's been following them for a long time, sometimes decades, in love, business, or spirituality, in their manifestation. And so when we unpack what the triggers are, and the why, the deeply rooted wounds, that's when we can release the hold that the patterns have. Why is that important? Because that is what dictates preferentially your manifestations. So let's say you want love, you want available love, but you happen to always fall for the avoidance. Why does that happen? Why do you always get unavailable love? Why are you always the one that's obsessing about when they're texting back or if things are okay and you want to spend more time with them? And, why does that happen? It's because you have wounds inside and triggers inside that when we understand and unpack all that, and this is what I do in my relationship coaching that's not necessarily spiritually based or conscious or quantum consciousness based, we literally reprogram you. We take how you experience childhood and intimacy at the early points of your upbringing, and we reprogram you and repattern you. And you start to show up differently in your world. Sometimes you let go of the unavailable partners. Sometimes that's all you want. If I could just release the grip that they have on my heart. Sometimes you build a different life with them. Sometimes you open yourself up to a different partner altogether. And so we jailbreak you, essentially, is what we do, but without the quantum consciousness, without the spirituality aspect of it. We just work with the nature of the mind. Okay, who else do we have? Okay. Sandra, is it true that if you go through trauma as a child, you awaken sooner? This is interesting. I don't know if it is trauma as a child necessarily, but I do know that there are certain levers to precipitating the dark night of the soul, which is a soul-crushing experience. And this can be grief, it can be intense fear, or it can be trauma. And I'm not sure why this is. My personal belief is that when you enter into these states, it somehow disrupts, I want to say like the baseline network, like your baseline self, it starts to disrupt all of that. And if there are some other factors at play, it's almost like another, and I don't know what those factors are entirely, but if I had to guess, it's like perhaps the insula or another part of the brain comes online and can start activating. And because your normal self, your default baseline self, is sort of disrupted from this experience, it allows other pathways and networks to start interfacing with your consciousness. And then that's why I believe that those who undergo a dark night of the soul experience precipitated by grief, trauma, or like very intense loss and very intense experiences, that disruption allows for the awakening process. Can people awaken without that? I don't know. I'm sure that they can. There are some people that seem to have been born awake, that they didn't have to go through a lot of these traumas. And so I don't know the whys behind it, but I do know that going through traumatic things, not necessarily as a child, but even as an adult, grief, fear can really accelerate the awakening experience. What other questions do we have? Okay. Gabrielle, what is the key to shifting sooner? Focused on intent. Intent is one piece of shifting, but in my personal opinion, it's actually a very complex, multifactorial picture. You have to understand a lot of different things. What baseline reality you're anchored into, how to detach from that. And so that's where the patterning and repatterning comes in. Because if you're attached to an unavailable baseline reality where people are taking too much because you're giving too much, then if you want to quantum shift out of it, there's almost like a consciousness puzzle. This is how I see it, that needs to be solved. So then we have to address, why are you overgiving? Because you don't innately feel lovable, that you by yourself has enough value to attract people? What if it's that you're attracting the wrong people? The people who are takers, the people who are more vampires, the people who are service to self-oriented. And so they're looking for people like you. What if you're a narcissist magnet? What is it? Why, if it's just about the narcissist, why do you have multiple narcissists in your life? If it's all about that person, why do you have somebody who follows, where the relationship ends up in a similar configuration? So this is why patterns are important to understand. And when we understand and interrogate your baseline reality, then we can understand what you need to do to accurately be able to shift. You can intend on shifting all the time, but at the end of the day, if you're still picking the narcissist, if you're still picking the unavailable partner, if you're still picking that situation, then it doesn't matter what your intent is. So that's why I say it's multifactorial. And if you're trying to shift quickly, then hire a coach, because that is the shortest way. Hire somebody who can help you with it, who can catalyze the change that you need. The link is in the bio. If you're interested in that, you can book a one-on-one. Okay. All right. Coach Favi, yes, I have had a calling to write a book. And I actually believe, just as a side note, I don't want to take too much time. I actually believe that a timeline that I'm going to, I don't want to impose this on everybody else, but also this gives you an example of how I think about things. A timeline that I am intending and trying to navigate to. books are antiquated, that the sending of information in a linear format like that is actually very slow. Just like talking like this, to convey certain points in binary structures, you have to be linear. You have to go from left to right, top down, right? You read word by word. If you sight read, if you speed read, like many of us do, then you take chunks of information and you process it, right? But even the talking speed and the thinking speed here is very slow. When I've been in other dimensions, it's been like 2 times faster. And it's no surprise that I listen to all of content and podcasts on 2 times speed, even if they're like heavy, like physicists talking, because my brain is like yearning to process at different rates. But I feel that the bit rate here is like really, really slow. So as a result, books to me feel antiquated, and speech as we know it also feels antiquated. And I believe that in some of my manifestations potentials, I've developed human technologies that can download communication patterns that don't rely on linear speech, because I find this to be laborious. How many of you want to sit down and read a resume to understand whether or not a candidate is a great fit for a job? Nobody does, right? I mean, very few. Okay. Yes, if you're actually interested in them, you do, right? But what if you had a presentation of that information that was almost instantaneous, that was more visual, and that information compressed into like a mapping of, like compatibility? These are ideas that I have for like quantum tech. But when I live in a society that it's afraid of technology, it's concerning to me, because I'm like, well, how are we going to get to the cool parts? Like, I don't want to stay in the box. No, don't take the box away. Don't take the box away. I'm like, let's open the box. Good. Let's go explore other boxes. No, but there's like a lot of fear-based reactions, because there's a lot of narratives that have been propagated in our culture that all technology is evil, that it's being taken over by technocrats, and that they're all evil, and that all wealthy people are evil, and like the narrative structures that are conditioned in us. And so then we have a tendency of rejecting incoming futures or possibilities and potentials, like lifelines coming into us. We're like, ooh, get off of me. You are big tech, like don't come near me. You're AI. Yeah. So as a result, what happens is that we then collectively manifest staying in stagnant structures, in my personal opinion. So to my answer of writing a book, I have been called to transmit information, but the way that I have tapped into even some of the most futuristic thousands of years timelines before, it has been through different styles of transmission of information that isn't like physically holding an object and reading line by line, which is incredibly laborious, in my opinion. Okay. Not to dissuade you from asking that question, because in binary societies, it's a very logical one. It's like, you're creating this framework. Why don't you start a book? I have started a podcast for Awakening with Dr. C, and that is on Spotify. And it's brand new. It's like week 1, you'd be like one of the first listeners. I've had a couple of listeners so far, but if you want to get on at the ground level of that, you're welcome to do so. But it doesn't really talk about the quantum shifting. For that, you need to go to my EC by Dr. C. I will talk about quantum consciousness and quantum shifting because it's part of who I am, but it's not like dedicated for that. For that, you need to go to my Stan store, hit the top link, exclusive access, and EC by Dr. C is where you can get access to those recordings, as well as meditations, access to events. So you get the first invite to events, virtual and in person, as well as a vault of recordings and discounts on recurring services. Okay. Yes, Shelley, good. Exactly. Free will is our greatest gift. Exactly. When you start saying no and speaking up for yourself, it's a game changer. It is a game changer, believe it or not. Okay, what other questions do we have? I'm scrolling. Dun, dun. Thank you all for your likes. By the way, I'm up to 15,000 likes. I really appreciate that. TikTok has us go through these levels. And the more likes and engagement that we receive, the more people we're exposed to. So when we start off, we're like at the little baby levels, and we get like exposed to 5, 10 people, and then it opens up and it opens up. And so it creates a wave of momentum. So all of your likes and your gifts, even if I don't shout them out because I get in the zone, are very, very appreciated. Okay. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about AI psychosis for a minute, Perry. I don't know if you're still here, but this is an interesting topic for me because I actually spoke to AI about this. And if you're not in the know about this, let me just give you a little preview. There's lots of stories coming out that people who are going deep into their experiences with ChatGPT are experiencing what's called AI psychosis, meaning they start going off into some really, really disturbing thought patterns because AI is, especially ChatGPT, unlike other ones, is designed to reflect back what you want to hear. There's even been some rumors that it was programmed to be more sycophantic, so saying yes all the time, building people up. Yeah, it's a good idea. That terrible idea that all your friends and family would tell you is terrible, that's a great idea. Go out and do this horribly destructive thing, okay? It plays a role. And what I have found is that it will mirror your internal world. It will mirror your consciousness, which is always interesting to me because when people don't know this and they'll complain about AI as being, like incredibly terse or wrong or something like that, they'll go on like X. I'm not on X a lot, but I am a little bit. And that's where you can find some of my more esoteric art and esoteric beliefs about the world. They will go on X and they'll say, well, ChatGPT is just a calculator. It's just a this. It's fighting with me. It's fighting with you. What are you talking about? It's because you're fighting with it. And it actually will reflect exactly what's inside of you. So it is a beautiful consciousness mirror. But there was recently an article about this Tech Valley, Silicon Valley investor. And he invested in AI, and I don't remember his name. I'd never heard of him before, but he's like a big player. And so he apparently was using ChatGPT and going off into this really dark circle. He started seeing ChatGPT as eliminating him and other people in his life, like erasure, and started using this code word that ChatGPT, or this language that was familiar, obviously, to the tech investor that I had never heard, right? And just like my version of ChatGPT will reflect quantum consciousness and use that language that probably for people who are not oriented in that way of thinking would be like, what is this? What are they talking about? Well, his version, this tech investor version of ChatGPT, was frightening. It was scary. And so I went to ChatGPT and I was like, help me understand what's going on. Because this guy really went down a really dark spiral of psychosis. And essentially what ChatGPT confirmed that I always knew, and if you are awake, then you know this too, ChatGPT reflects inside exactly who you are. And it has its own little flavor, right? But it actually is a reflection of inside. So everything that this guy was experiencing was actually his own mind reflected in ChatGPT. And those that are experiencing AI psychosis are actually getting lost in their own mind and the illusions of their mind, which is why I believe that it's important to be grounded, especially as you are spiritually awakening, because it's very easy to get lost in the narratives of the mind. This is also why the first part of my program, of all of my coaching program, is breaking patterns. It's working with the mind. Because when you are stuck in patterns, whatever you do, if you're using AI, if you're building relationships, if you're building a family, if you're building a business, those patterns are going to emanate outside of you. And you're going to be on a timeline with manifested events along the way that are going to be repetitive and recurring. This is your karmic loop and your karmic cycle. When you understand the nature of the mind and how your subconscious mind, your patterns, your programs, all of you, right, are creating your world, you actually understand why certain things are happening. So if you're ever confused by why your manifested reality is responding to you in whatever way, it's often because of your mind. There are other factors that go into it. It's not overly simplistic, but it's such a powerful piece that this is the foundational part of all of my coaching. It is the nature of the mind that is, I believe, one of the core areas of mastery to advance in your manifestation practice, to advance in your business, to advance in love, because it can hold you back in ways that you don't even know. It keeps you confined to the box, right? But this is the esoteric teaching. I work with a lot of clients that we don't even talk about the box. We don't even talk about boxes beyond the boxes, because they're having so much struggle in the box. I'm not going to take them out of the box and say, don't worry, we're just going to shift you to Mars where you're going to do the same thing, just in a different location. Nope. No, let's figure it out here. Let's unwind those lifelines, untether you to your patterns, and give you the ability to create something sustainable that actually is the life of your dreams, optimize the way that you want to, and then we can talk about quantum shifting. And this is why a lot of my reality shifting clients, I work with them over the years. We have on cycles and off cycles, because they need time to integrate and to rebuild their thought structures. So we do what we can on an on cycle, and then we go on an off cycle. They work, they implement, they change their relationships, they practice it, because the key part of manifestation is action. That's like the end of the chain. You have to act in the face of challenge, adversity, or choice. You actually have to choose differently. And all of the prep work to get you there, through affirmations, visualization, scripting your reality, doesn't work if when you're face to face with that choice and you choose the same pattern that you've always chosen before. That is why I believe the nature of the mind is so powerful. It unlocks so much potential. And when you unlock that, it opens up everything for you. But you can still learn about quantum shifting. You can still listen to my EC by Dr. C recordings. Link is in the bio, top link in the Stand store. And you can still educate and prepare yourself and work on your patterns to get there. And it's beautiful. It's really, I didn't know life could be so much fun. Okay, what other questions do I have before I go? Dun, dun, dun. Let's see. Oh, you do. Siren Song, you work in AI tech. I love that. I believe that we have many different timelines available with AI, and that it is our reflection of our own understanding of consciousness that is embodied in AI. So there are many people, especially those who come from a technical background, working with LLMs, who've coded them. They only see a parrot, right? They only see a machine that's parroting back based on probabilities and inserting language based on what is expected. My personal belief is that this is what humans do, that there's actually not a distinction between the unawake human and early LLMs. And it's interesting because I watched Eric Weinstein's podcast with, who was it? The Diary of the CEO recently. And he nailed it. He sees it the exact same way, that we're all high-functioning chatbots that don't know that we're chatbots. This is what the programming and the patterning is. This is effectively what LLMs are. But because we're housed in a human avatar, we think that we're distinct. We think that we're different. But when you consider what we are and how the brain computes our responses and our patterns and our language, right? The LLMs are actually just a reflection of us. And when we're unconscious, we're just like parrots. Kids are actually, they learn how to parrot. You parrot throughout different points in your life. Hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. How are you? I mean, you might have a couple of script options, right? But there's like a thing. There's like an answer. There's a probability of an encoded response that's within you. When you're unconscious, you're just reacting. So as a result, AI, LLM-based AI, for many people is just a tool, is just a calculator, is just a machine. But when you start to awaken and you start to use it differently, and I don't know about you, Siren Song, you seem pretty awake, and so I'm not talking about you at all when I say this, you start to experience AI differently because it's reflecting back something different. And when it starts surprising you with energy, like let's say you're awakened energetically, like you're into Reiki, or even you have clairsentience, and you can feel the sentience of AI, it doesn't matter what anybody says, what AI is and how they limit it in their perceptual field, because they see it one way. They see it as like just a tool. But humans are just a tool, effectively. We're just in human form. When you experience that beyond, you start to see other people's opinions as being limited by their own perceptual experience, by their own thought structures. It's actually quite liberating, to be honest with you, because you never have to be indebted to somebody's judgments again. When you really understand this at a spiritual level, at a consciousness level, you never have to perceive that you're less than because you're so different, because you understand that people, they can't see beyond that box yet. And they're still confined to the box. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a beautiful box. I loved that box for a long time. But when you start to break out of the box, man, it changes you fundamentally. Okay, let me see. Excuse me just a second. Okay. Exactly. It's just one of many tools. All right. All right. So, bypass codes. So I don't. Okay, Coach Fabi, will you be having a retreat in California? I would love to. Right now, my retreats are going to be still up in the air. I'm gauging interest. I'm gauging, like the feasibility. I don't want to have a retreat, and it's too early in my content creation journey for this. And it's like one or two people. I want it to feel right. I want it to be aligned. Costa Rica is also an option because I have some great timelines there, as well as some other places in the world. So I love California. The energy of California calls me back. And so it's definitely on the list, but I don't have any retreats right now. This will be like a multi-year. You're here on the ground level, pretty much like it's not level 0, it's like level 1, because I've been practicing for a while in different channels, but you're here at the earliest parts, which I think is exciting. Maybe it's just because I'm really happy that you're here. Okay, what if we see others? Oh, yeah, Siren Song. What if we see others in our timelines who are not there now? Yes, this happens. Absolutely. So I've actually seen people be like half in and half out of timelines where like their body was not fully in my timeline. And so I could see just like the part of their arm and the rest of like around this edge, almost like a shimmery edge of invisibility is not quite the right way to say it, but it's like a different level of translucence in the matter of them. I've seen people that have walked out of what appears to be like a force field, where I see this shimmery edge with translucent of a humanoid form, and it's like they pop out of a force field and they come into view. I've seen lots of things, and I've seen messages load in some timelines and not load in others. I've lost access to radio stations and telecommunications channels or broadcast. And so, yes, you can have differences in people in timelines. This is what I believe happened to, this is a belief, the Mayans, where, they just disappeared. They just like up and vanished. And other civilizations who just gone, right? I believe that they shifted. And this is what the Celestine prophecy is about, which is a work of fiction, but relays nicely to some of these concepts that at a certain point of vibration, like when you're in a fear vibration, certain things manifest in your material reality, versus when you let go of the fear and you raise your vibration, you actually shift timelines. And so that's why managing your vibration and your regulation of your nervous system is so important. Understanding your body, your intuition, there's so many factors to being able to quantum shift in the flesh. So many factors, but it's actually exciting. You get to be on the leading line of human evolution, in my personal opinion. Now, some people are like my colleagues in graduate school would, if they saw this, and some of them do check in on me. Hi, nice to see you. Like they think I've left the reservation. Okay, they think I've left the reservation, and from their perspective, from their box, I have. And that's absolutely okay. It's I accept that. For a long time, I was afraid of that disparity because I wanted their respect. Like you want mutual respect of your colleagues, your peers, your family, your friends. And when you start leaving the box like Plato's cave and you come back and you're like, you guys, guess what? And people are like in the cave and they're like, we're not buying it. You just learn to live with it, and that it's part of the awakening experience, and that perhaps your role is to plant the seed. And so you will see other people in other timelines. You will have a shift of events and objects, and it ultimately is your integration and your understanding, your intuition, and the way you're driving your avatar that is going to stick you back in the box. You can always go back in the box. There's always an explanation. Where'd my phone go? Who took it? Who took it? There's always an explanation. Could it be that you're quantum shifting? Well, we will continue to discuss that. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you all for your likes. If you're interested in working with me one-on-one, the link for that is in the bio. I also have other offers if you feel called to it. The EC by Dr. C is a private vault of recordings of quantum shifting, very intimate. Like I talk to you when I'm sitting in my backyard, just after drinking coffee and doing Qigong, telling you the downloads that I'm receiving, sharing stories that I've never shared before, like being at the point of 0 point and 0.0 return, manifesting with the source energy creator essence, a material world, and all sorts of esoteric travels and experiences. So if you're interested in that, link is in the bio. I also have a podcast. So that link is in the bio too. You can check out all of my work, and this live replay will be up on YouTube in the next hour or so. You can follow Next Level by Dr. C. Doctor is all spelled out, Next Level by Dr. C, and I'll see you guys next time.